Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined with Stephen Jaffe, who is running for Congress in California, District 12, and he's running against Nancy Pelosi. He is actually a lawyer and a bird lover, but he wanted to take her on, rightfully so. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Stephen. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Joy.
Absolutely. We were actually fortunate enough to meet in Chicago at the People Summit, which was pretty awesome. So what made you decide to run?
Well, it was kind of a three-step process, I think is the best way to describe it. I was very inspired by Bernie Sanders. I worked very hard for him, and I was gave him money, and then I was recruited by the national campaign. They sent me to Nevada to help supervise the what turned out to be completely chaotic Nevada caucuses. So I guess the first step was great inspiration. Bernie's message really resonated with me. The second thing was just, I guess I'd call it anger over the way I thought he was completely screwed out of the nomination by the Democratic establishment and some of the people that I'm sure we'll discuss in a moment. And then all of us woke up in horror on November 8th of last year, seeing what had been elected. And I took Bernie's words literally, stop talking about it and run for office. So I'm going to run against Nancy Pelosi because I'm not a spring chicken. I can't work my way up the political ranks, and I've got 46 years of trial experience, and I feel quite qualified to do the job of taking her out.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the people she's friends with are criminals, so I think you might be well suited. So, let's see. How did you determine that you were going to run Democrat? What did you weigh options?
Well, certainly I'm aware of the movement to run as a third party. I'm aware of all the issues involving that. I ran as a Democrat for two reasons. One, I've been a lifelong Democrat, and I do feel some sense of I'm not sure what the right noun is, loyalty or dedication, but I also want to win the election. And I think everyone who's challenged Nancy Pelosi in the past has done it from outside the Democratic Party. There was a Cindy Sheehan, there was a Green Party, there was a no party preference. Last time it was a no party preference. And to be a really serious candidate and have a real shot at winning, which I fully intend to do, I thought it was necessary to run from inside the party and challenge her within her own party. So that was the other piece that led me to run as a Democrat.
That makes total sense, especially because California is also a closed primary. I'm in Pennsylvania, same thing. So that's also, it's also difficult to get people registered outside the Democratic Party in time, and there's so many different things to weigh. So I totally understand that strategy. How many people are running against you besides you and Nancy Pelosi?
There's one other candidate running, a law student who's 24 years old.
In what party?
Democratic Party.
Oh, I see. And
I assume there's a Green Party person running. I assume there's a Republican. Republicans don't have great success running in San Francisco.
right.
I'm sure there's some of the other parties, Peace and Freedom Party, I'm sure has a candidate. But those are the ones that I'm aware of now.
So, and I know California is like different. All of our states are so different with how primaries work and then generals and everything like that. When is your actual primary date?
Well, let me explain how the California primary works. California has what's called a top two primary. And that means that everybody from every party runs in the same primary. The Republicans, the Democrats, the Greens, everybody. And the top two finishers, regardless of their party, then face off against each other in the general election. I expect to finish a strong second in the primary. And then all the other candidates who drop off, I believe all of those votes will belong to me. And that's part of my strategy of overtaking Nancy Pelosi in the general.
That's awesome. That I just the fact I think you're amazing, but just the fact you're running against her too. I would love to see her face. If are you going to be able to debate her? Is she going to allow that?
Ms. Pelosi has not debated an opponent since 1987, but I feel that my challenge of her is more serious than the ones in the past, and I intend to do everything I can to try to get her in to debate me. I think if she does so, I think it will tremendously enhance my chances of winning the election. And if she does not, I think she's going to have a lot of voters here in San Francisco asking, where's Nancy and why isn't she willing to debate Stephen Jaffe?
Exactly. It's kind of like when Hillary didn't come out when she was still in the running, and she didn't come out for a press conference in over 10 months. What are you hiding from? Like, why you're supposed to be able to answer people's questions. And
she's been having what I call these sham town halls. She puts them on CNN. They are held in secret locations. They are filled up with pre-selected audiences. The audience has to select and turn in their questions to her before they're answered. So the whole thing is scripted. It's all scripted, and nothing is spontaneous. If I have a debate or a town hall, I want local voters with undisclosed questions who ask the questions they really want to ask. I want a neutral, unbiased moderator, and I want to hold it here in San Francisco. That's the only fair way to do it. So,
wow, that's oh my gosh, that's and just so you guys know, I don't know if it's more of a. I mean, I'll listen, but I don't know if it's more of a character test I kind of do, so I'm probably ruining it for future guests. But I always ask people before I start, is there anything you do not want to talk about? And like all my other guests, Stephen said, no, just whatever. And I love that transparency. That's who we need. I noticed your website talks about a lot of different causes. What is your biggest passion? What are you like? Let's say you do get elected. What is your biggest concentration?
Well, the thing that people talk most about is the single payer issue. And of course, I would put that certainly in the front line of my issues. I have some, I want to reform the Democratic Party. I want to abolish superdelegates. I want to clean out the corruption in the party. I've been endorsed, for example, by Tim Canova, who's running in Florida, and he wants to clean out another end of the country with somebody who's caused a great deal of corruption and problems. So that is also an issue. My personal issues would be I want to decriminalize mental illness. I have a family member who is affected by that, and I have personally experienced what happens to people who are mentally ill. They are taken to jail. Nobody chooses to be mentally ill, and they should not be treated as criminals. I feel strongly about the environment, and as you noticed, you said bird lover. I'm a very strong animal rights advocate because
Awesome.
my wife and I have 4 parrots and a dog, and that's a big deal to me. I want to get the country out of the perpetual state of war that we are in. The country is addicted to a perpetual state of war, and it's gotten to the point where there's over a $700 billion military budget, which I personally find to be obscene. That's got to stop, and our resources have to be turned to helping people, medical research, rebuilding the infrastructure, helping the poor, the homeless, um, people like that, not building weapons for ourselves and other countries. So those are some. I could go on and on.
Yeah,
On
no,
the issues.
I'm right there with you. And, they had that ridiculous $70 billion war budget plan increase crap. And Bernard was one of two or three that didn't sign that. You have people like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren. They all signed that bill.
Yeah, and Nancy Pelosi.
And Nancy Pelosi, exactly.
That's right. I will tell you that had I been in Congress, I would not have voted for that budget, that war bill.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible, and it makes me want to say, are you gonna send your kids over to war, or
most of the wars that we've been in since World War II have not been necessary and have ended in stalemates or almost feeling like losses. Vietnam was a complete disaster, and if you ask young people today, why did we go to Vietnam? There is no answer. Why did we invade Iraq? We invaded Iraq based on a lie. There was no rational reason to invade Iraq. President Bush said, "Oh, there's weapons of mass destruction there." Well, there weren't, and he had his own personal reasons for doing that. So I'm a anti-war candidate to the extent that I don't absolutely say we should never do it, but the times that we should use our military should be strictly restricted to situations where they have to be used, and most of the time they're not. We just keep going to war to keep our war machine going and the military budget going and the weapons builders in business instead of going to war when we need to go for military reasons.
Absolutely. And I think one of those times we saw it was during the no DAPL bullshit debacle. You have people showing up who look like they're going to Iraq, and they're literally just infiltrating Native American land. It was It was disgusting. But that's it's becoming that police state, so to speak.
Yes, I also want to talk about the wealth disparity. I would return a graduated tax structure, which we used to have in the 60s and 70s, where the more you make, the more you pay. And we need to restore a strong middle class. Trump and the Republicans are destroying the whole country, but in particular with this tax bill, they're destroying the middle class. And that has to stop. The middle class is the basis of our economy.
That's true. And I mean, to me, that's so, like, in politics, common sense is not so common, but you make more, you pay more taxes. I mean, to me, that's just so, like, I don't even know where they're so not one of us that they're so far removed.
The most prosperous time the United States has ever had were the years following World War II up until about the 60s and 70s, economically. Do you know what the top tax was back then?
What's that?
91%.
Wow.
Not from your first dollar, but the first $50,000 or $75,000 was taxed at a low rate. The next $50,000 to $100,000 is taxed at a little higher rate. And then it keeps going up. And the more you earn, the more you pay on the next level. That is absolutely fair. It worked, and
wow.
I would try to put something like that back in place in the tax code. This new tax law is terrible.
Yeah, and the interesting, well, not interesting, but infuriating thing is they said, okay, we're going to vote in like an hour or two, but it's 500 pages, here we go, and then we're going to vote. Like, no chance to look over it or anything, and then they slip like all these things like repealing Roe v. Wade and all this other crap into the tax bill, and then people just sign it
Right. They put Arctic drilling in there. They put an
Yes.
anti-environment clause in there. Yes, I know. And the same thing happened with Obamacare on the other side when the Democrats were in control and nobody could read this monster bill. Nancy Pelosi said, "Oh, we'll read it after we pass it." That's not the
Yeah,
way that's not the way legislation is supposed to work.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And I something that not a lot of people are talking about is that Bernard actually came up with an amendment and brought it to the floor as soon as the tax bill passed that said, look, you're pulling your crap and it's already passed, but I drew up an amendment so that you are not going to cut Medicare, Medicaid, or anything and come with the complete BS that we can't afford it now. And 3 Democrats are the ones who ended up shooting it down.
yeah, I
So,
don't understand what motivated those Democrats, but I will say this. I think that the Republicans are going to have a very, very difficult time cutting Medicare and Medicaid benefits. There will be a general revolt of the population if they try to do that on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats. That is such a fundamental benefit that people are getting. It's like repealing Social Security, which is another thing.
right?
They'll never be able to do that. That
I hope so.
people no, I don't think so. I don't
Well,
think that
if
I
you
mean
look at Paul Ryan's always like, my mother's on Medicare. Like that's his answer to everything.
yeah.
It's like, okay, so
Well,
that's
I wonder, Joy, I wonder what his mother has to say about having her Medicare benefits cut.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Well, he has enough money to take care of her, so
Well, yeah, but I still think it's wrong. I don't think that will happen. I think that was a kind of a red herring.
yeah, well, one can only hope. But yeah, you're right. It would be extremely difficult to implement, which is at
Yes.
least somewhat reassuring. What are you going to do since California is a closed primary state? What are you planning on doing to ensure high voter turnout and registration in high numbers? What are you doing? I know you do have a lot of events where you speak with other local candidates and things like that. Are you doing anything to reach out to people who may be Republicans or Greens or what have you and kind of talk to them
Oh,
to
yes.
try?
Yeah. Well, the answer to your question is it's going to start within a month or two in my campaign. Is the short answer is feet on the ground. We have a very large body of volunteers, and we are going to canvass, and we're going to hit the streets and knock on doors, feet on the ground and hands on doors, and we're going to talk to voters. I'm getting better known now, but I still need to be better known, and we're going to send out people and try to introduce them to who I am, what I've done, and what I want to do in Congress. Really, I mean, the short answer. You asked me at the beginning here, why am I running? And I told how I came to that decision. But the real reason I am running is to do something that the people of San Francisco do not have now. The people of San Francisco do not have their voice in Congress. They do not have someone who represents their values and their wishes and the issues that they're concerned about. They have somebody who really perceives herself to be kind of the Congresswoman of the United States, but she's not. She's the Congresswoman of the 12th district. These are the people who elect her, and she's forgotten about that. And I don't aspire to be the minority leader or any other kind of. I just aspire to be the congressperson and the voice of San Francisco in Congress. And that's really why I'm running.
Absolutely. We need some fresh faces as well. She hasn't done anything for us, and she's been in this quite a while. And she's been an apologist for a lot of things that went on in 2016. Poor Stephen Jaffe. You guys have no idea how many articles I send this man through Messenger, like nonstop. I'm like, look at this. Oh my God, I can't believe she said this. And, like she, at the one event, all the immigrants were there and they were saying, speak for us, speak for us. And she had a temper tantrum and stormed off the stage.
Yes, that's correct. She recently also said that she is not opposed to a ground invasion of North Korea.
I saw that as well.
Yes, I am strongly opposed to that. That's a no-win. That's another Vietnam that we don't need to get into right now.
That's the thing. A lot of what she says and a lot of other, people in the Democratic Party sound like Republicans with a lot of the things they say, or a lot of times they sound centrist at best. So,
well, I call some of them Republican light. Kind of like light beer.
Exactly.
Right.
Are people, like, I know you said you're in San Francisco. I'm sure there's a huge LGBTQ movement there. I know some people on Facebook who do events there. Are people politically active in other, my mind went blank, but other areas as well?
Oh, well, I think this is the time for me to talk about a little about what I've been doing for the last 46 years.
Yeah.
I am an employment law civil rights lawyer. I represent people who have been treated badly and wrongly in the workplace, and I have literally represented hundreds of LGBT people for discrimination of almost any kind. I tried the first straight male harassing a gay male case in the city of San Francisco in 1996. As far as I know, it was the first one. That's obviously against the law. And I've represented every race, religion, minority, disability, sexual orientation, marital status you can possibly imagine. So that should give you a sense of where my values are on issues like the one we're talking about. I've really made my life. That's been my life's work.
That is awesome. That's exactly the kind of thing Bernie-crats are looking for and progressives are looking for. So I see some comments in the comment thread, and basically, I don't know how much you've seen my show or Steve's or Joe's, but we talk about something called MMT. Are you familiar with that?
Tell me what it is. I think so.
Modern monetary theory.
Yes, I think so. Be a little more specific on is this the guaranteed income? Is that part of it?
The Green New Deal. It's kind of related.
Okay.
But yeah, the basically MMT is it's not necessarily a theory, it's more like a science, but it basically states that federal essentially we don't go broke. The trillions in debt we are is not accurate because they make their own money.
Yeah, no, I think most people, I can't comment on that. Most people don't understand that running a government is not the same thing as running a business. Okay? For the very reason you just stated, which is the government is the creator of money. And there are times when deficit spending is necessary. I'm a great fan of Franklin Roosevelt, for example, and what he did during the 30s to get us out of the Depression was deficit spending, but it was brilliant and it worked. And there's no reason we can't do that. I don't think the country is about to fall on its face economically unless we spend our way on wars, which is a topic I've already addressed. But I think we have the resources to carry on. And the debt that's accumulated is not a real debt in the sense that your and my credit card debt is a real debt. There won't be anybody knocking at the door demanding collection or suing us if it's not paid.
So, like, when people say, oh, we can't afford Medicare for all, that's complete garbage. And
Well, that's garbage for several reasons. So
mm-hmm.
we can't afford it. We already have Medicare for people over 65, and it works just fine. And really, what I have in mind is just expanding that existing program for everybody else.
I think if, you guys beat all the other states, lack of a better term, with, HR 676. So you guys got further than any of us. And I think if it is going to be implemented, or when it's going to be implemented, I think California may be first. And then once you guys, set that precedent, I think it's going to happen. I hope.
Well, I'm a strong supporter of 562, which is the California bill. An establishment Democrat pulled it off the table, and he's being recalled now. There's a recall campaign against him now. He was the speaker.
Really?
He was the speaker. Yeah, he was the speaker of the assembly. His last name is Rendon, Randon, and so he's not real popular now. But there are various political reasons why that happened. But there's a very strong movement now to get that going again. And I do think that California might be first. But I'm running for a federal office, and I'm not going to wait for California or any other state to do it. I want it done at the federal level. If I get in there, I'll start working on it right away. There's already a bill pending. It's HR 676, and I'd sign on and go to work for it.
That is awesome. Because I know you also have the California Nurses Union, who's huge.
Yes, and they are very pro 562.
Absolutely.
Very pro 562. Correct.
That's awesome. What how do you deal with the abundance of cognitive dissonance that has kind of infiltrated the not just progressive movement, but between neoliberals and the news and people who just hate Trump and don't know, like, refuse to learn anything else? How do you go about explaining things to people who don't want to hear the truth about things?
Well, that's a great question. That is a really good question. I think education of them and talking to those people, but doing it in a manner which is not taking the same road they are. In other words, the two topics, there's an old saying, don't never talk when you're around the dinner table about politics or religion. And the reason for that is cognitive dissonance is when people have deeply held beliefs and they hear facts which dispute those deeply held beliefs, they tend to dismiss them. We don't believe that, okay? Whether it's a religious faith or whether it's I love Trump or I love Hillary or whatever it is, they don't want to hear the other side. And I think getting to those people really has to do with how you approach them. If you just scream at them and yell your side back, you're never going to get in. They're going to just shut right off. Their eyes will glaze over. I think they have to be approached in a little different kind of way. I'll have to think about what that would be. I mean, obviously, I've tried several hundred jury cases, and it's my job to sell my point of view to people who may be skeptical. So I do it, or I try to do it. I don't yell. I don't pound my fist on the table. There's some lawyers who do that, but I found that being calm and rational and explaining things to people works better over the years. So
it does. I admit I don't always have that capability. They call me Savage Joy for a reason, especially online. What I'm sure you noticed, because you are on Facebook, pretty much daily. What are your takes on the the huge divide between progressives right now. There's just so much infighting. I mean, what can we do?
I've given several speeches where I begin, I don't have it with me today, where I begin by reading a letter that Franklin Roosevelt wrote to the Democratic Convention in 1938. He had already served 2 terms as president. He was helping the country recover from the Depression. And there was a faction within the Democratic Party, very similar to what's going on now, that what was turning towards more corporate, more to the right. And of course, they wanted Roosevelt. He was so wildly popular, they wanted him to run again so that another Democrat would be elected. But he wrote a letter to the Democratic Convention, and I urge, it's in July of 1938, and I urge everyone to look it up. And he said some amazing things, but one of the things he said is people have to choose which side they're on. He says the party, this is one exact quote, the party cannot face in 2 directions at the same time. And that's a quote I use. That's where we are right now. That letter could have been written in 2017. And I think we have to re-examine what is the mission of the Democratic Party? What are the goals? What is the heart and soul of the Democratic Party? And if the heart and soul of the Democratic Party is helping the unfortunate, helping people stay healthy, helping people stay out of war, and pretty much all the progressive platform that I imagine, then you have to look at who's trying to do that and who is not. And I think you will see that us progressives are the ones who are true to the real values and heart of the Democratic Party. And we have to persuade the rest of our voters, not the establishment, elite, entitled Democratic establishment, to follow us. And I think it's not going to happen suddenly. I think these elections this year, or next year, I should say, 2018, are very important because we're in different times now. Trump's changed everything in terms of how he's energized people who have kind of been asleep politically for a long time. And I'm certainly one of them. I was a Democratic voter, but I wasn't running for office. So that's what we have to do. We have to vote and get in more and more progressives at every single level, whether it's from dog catcher to president. We have to get progressives in there, and that will change the country.
Totally agree. And we saw a few weeks ago how amazing it was to get 2 transgender people elected and people of color elected. And there is a shift. I mean,
I think there is a real, what I call progressive surge. And I think there's going to be a real shock when people wake up after the midterms next November, or even some of the primaries. And they're going to say, wow. And I certainly intend to be part of that, working very hard at that.
You are. Just so you guys know, on a personal level, too, this is how Stephen is. He sent me a message the day after Thanksgiving and said he hoped I had a good Thanksgiving. Like, that's how down to earth he is. That's pretty awesome. And that was before we set a date for the show. So he wasn't buttering me up.
No, I like to be nice to people I like. So that's certainly true.
That's a good policy. That's definitely a good policy.
Yes.
How can we go forward with the exorbitant amount of vote shaming? Still, over a year later, people are, you should have, if you would have, how do we just get people to move past that? Because we can't change it.
I think we ask people to take a step back, ask people, what did you learn from the experiences of 2016? And then move forward. Okay, I learned a lot of things about some Democrats I don't really like, who will not go. I'll go unnamed right now, but about how Bernie lost the nomination. I learned about how corrupt and fixed the Democratic Party is at the national level. That's got to be fixed. But a lot of people also learned what progressive means and who Bernie Sanders was and have been energized and are working. So I think we need to draw the good lessons too from that and move forward and work on campaigns that really, really matter, that really, really matter.
Absolutely. And I think, that's something good that came out of Trump because, Hillary would have been business as usual. I would have still been protesting because to me, she's.
Oh, yeah.
Evil.
No, let me tell you how bad. Let me tell you how bad it is. There is a lawyer named Jared Beck. He's down in Florida,
Yes.
and he has brought a lawsuit on behalf of some people against Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC.
Right.
And there was a court hearing where the DNC lawyers showed up, and I'm not making this up. What I'm about to say, because I'm going to tell you what the DNC lawyers argued to the court. They said, "Look, this court has no jurisdiction over us. We are a private organization, and we can go fix, lie, cheat, and steal the nomination, and there's not a damn thing you, the court, can do about it." And that was their argument. And that is the attitude of the DNC. And it's still going on. Tom Perez is throwing out progressives out of the DNC and out of their positions. And the only way to stop this is to find the progressive running in your district, no matter at what level it is: city attorney, mayor, councilman, congressman, senator. Find the progressive, work for them, and vote for them.
Absolutely. I had Nico House on like 2 weeks ago. He's the one who started the lawsuit. And when the transcript came out, I literally read that 132 pages 2 times because I was just like, this is surreal. No lawyer would be this stupid to say this shit. Like, it was incredible.
I think that that ruling in the lower court and the federal district court will be appealed. And I'm hopeful that some good legal arguments will be made, and that that dismissal will be reversed. And that's a big deal. I also hope Tim Canova takes out Debbie Wasserman Schultz anyway. So
I had Tim on, and I was saying that to someone today that all the people I've had on are so inspiring and so so amazing. But I think that, between you and Tim Canova, both of you have such you guys are running against 2 of the most powerful yet evil people. So it's so important that both of you win.
Well, let me say one thing about my race, which sounds a little self-serving, but I really believe this to be true. I think my race against Nancy Pelosi is the single most important congressional race in the United States right now. And it's not because of me or who I am, because I'm really not known nationally. It's because of who she is. She is the symbol of everything wrong in the party, the establishment, elite, wealthy Democrats. And when I take her down, which I'm going to do in November of next year, a year from now, that is every progressive in every corner of the country is going to be able to say to themselves, well, if this guy Jaffe can take down Nancy Pelosi, then I, the progressive, can take down anybody I need. And that's why my race is important. Again, not because of who I am. I'm just carrying the flag for progressive movement all over the country. That's the way I feel about it.
And it's people like you who are planting the seed, and you inspire people whether you know it or not. People see other people doing it, just us people who work, 40 hours a week, stuff like that. We're getting more involved. And that you can't tell us you're making rules for us when you've never lived like us. So people like yourself who are actually, so-called normal, us 99 percenters, you understand us more. So
well, yes, I agree. And I think that people like my opponent and others like her, have no way to relate, to people who have to work for a living.
Absolutely.
They live in a bubble of wealth, and privilege and entitlement, and they don't know what it's like to be on the streets and talk to people.
Absolutely. Hands down. I know we talked about single payers, something else you talk about on your website. You talk about gentrification, immigration reform, police shootings, holding the police accountable. These are all things that we don't hear enough so-called politicians speaking about. So as far as these three topics, how does that affect your state? What kind of things do you see going on that you want to tackle in California?
The gentrification issue, I'm running for a federal office, as you know, and the gentrification issue is really very much a local issue. It's very much a local issue. Land use and rent and construction are peculiarly local in nature. From a federal point of view, I think that this wild, uncontrolled construction has to stop, and this has a great deal. There's a wave of evictions. People whose families have lived in the cities for generations are being evicted because their homes are being bought, torn down, and put up, with luxury condos. And San Francisco is turning into a city of transients. People who come here, live here for a couple of years, work in the tech industry, and then move on. And that's got to stop. And from a federal point of view, I'm not sure what I can do. There's a horrible, horrible homelessness issue here, and mental illness crisis. From a federal point of view, I even think about maybe I could get FEMA to declare a disaster, and get the Surgeon General to declare a health crisis. Those are federal, and send people in and help these thousands of people. I mean, there's families living on the street with babies. There are women giving birth to babies on the streets here. That's just incomprehensible in this incredibly wealthy city. It's like the French Revolution. It's almost.
Yeah, it really is. Something that, speaking of gentrification, something I always think about is Flint. You have the majority of the people there are people of color. It's been over 3 years. These people have no clean water. They're being told if they don't pay their back pay of their bills, of their water lines, which they have not been able to use, that they will have liens put on their taxes on their houses.
Yeah, well, I can address that. I'm from Michigan. That's where I was born, raised, and educated. And Flint needs some kick-ass lawyers to get in there, because the law is suitable to deal with this situation. And they need some kick-ass lawyers to get in there and sue some of these people for their negligence and their malfeasance and their misfeasance. And that's it. These situations that you're describing, Joy, are just incomprehensible to me.
It is in 2017, nonetheless. Yes. And the good thing is, we are the media, because if internet didn't exist right now, we'd be screwed, because we learned with, the Bernard's campaign, Jill's campaign, we got no exposure. It's the internet, it's Facebook, things like that. That's how we know about DAPL. That's how we know about Flint.
Another thing about the internet, which has to do with my campaign, and everybody's campaign, is it used to be that the person raising the most money would win the election, because the only thing you could do with the money was buy TV ads, and people would see TV ads and they'd vote for the person. Things have changed now, because now what we're doing, you and I, right now, does not cost either of us anything. This is free. Okay, and the internet and social media and things like this show are a way for people to get a progressive message out for not and not have to spend these huge amount of money. So it's not just about money anymore. And that's what the reason that this progressive surge is taking hold around the country. Really.
Absolutely.
That's
Without a doubt. And now we have, this debacle with the internet that's going to be voted on in, let's see, 9 days or 10 days. What have you made, phone calls? Have you signed petitions? What have you been involved with to help save the internet, essentially?
Well, I've certainly been advocating for net neutrality. It's the idea of privatizing the internet is it's just like turning the clock back. It's like backwards time travel. I'm hopeful that it will not happen. Again, because I'm a lawyer, I'm hopeful that there will be lawsuits to hold it up and stop it. The internet and it's like the airways are public. The radio and the TV airways used to be public, and I think the internet is now a version of public airspace. So I'm hopeful, I'm cautiously optimistic we will be able to prevent the privatization of the internet and preserve net neutrality.
I hope so. It's so crazy to me that it comes down to 5 people. That's so bizarre how things like that work.
Well, it doesn't, because the Congress has powers to do things also. Those 5 people exist because there's statutes which create the FCC and create their existence. And Congress can go back and change whatever it wants. And that's, again, why I'm running for Congress, to change. I'm tired of this crap.
Exactly. People are, somebody just said, Stephen is woke. Yes, he is woke. And Dr. Joe, who is, a rock star, he said, Jaffe sounds like a first-class thinker and a leader. Now, Joe is a doctor, like an educational doctor. That's pretty rad.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Joe.
Shout out. And I also see you're huge on climate change, which is something, many progressives are passionate about.
Well, I'm huge on climate change. I want to ban fracking, which my opponent does not want to do. And I want to, climate change and the climate change deniers are part of a much bigger issue in our country, which is science deniers. You want to talk about cognitive dissonance? People. It's like denying gravity. You can deny gravity, but if you step off the cliff, you're still going to fall and kill yourself. And climate change deniers are essentially like people who are denying gravity. The evidence is overwhelming. It's indisputable, and they just don't want to see it. And I think we have to start changing our education system from the bottom up and do it quickly and do it fundamentally. And that's the way it's going to be done. And we have to aggressively attack the climate change deniers. And we got to get Trump out of office, too. Well,
yeah, for sure. I love when he said that global warming was a hoax created by the Chinese. That was one of his gems. That was pretty awesome.
Well, he's half right. A lot of global warming is created by the Chinese and their emissions, but they didn't make it up.
See, don't rationalize him, because he was not.
I'm not rationalizing him. I'm making fun of him. The Chinese are the biggest polluters in the world, and they're putting the most carbs, into the air, and they're causing a lot of this problem. But it's not fiction, like he says. It's real. So,
for sure.
Yeah, I signed on to Tulsi Gabbard's bill as an endorser. That by 2035 we are to be absolutely free of fossil fuels, free of it. And
awesome.
Trump's out there, and he's out there today taking back national park land for drilling. in Utah,
Yep.
taking off national parkland to drill. The idea is we're supposed to be going in the other direction. We're supposed to be getting away from natural resources, supposed to leave that stuff in the ground, and he's out there, let's go drill. The tax bill included a rider that they threw in at the last minute for drilling up in the Arctic. What the hell was that about? So,
Exactly.
Don't get me going here.
And well, and now, as far as elephants and stuff, like he's not even screwing over people. He's attacking animals too. Like he's stopping at nothing.
I would, the first day I'm in Congress, I will introduce a bill to ban the importation of dead animal parts. The slaughter of these animals in Africa is it's obscene. It's unbelievable. And you got pictures of the president's son standing there in front of dead giraffes, and it's I don't know what to say about that. I'm almost speechless, which is rare. Yeah.
And yeah, that's something I stress when I talk about you, that you are an animal lover. Because to me, that's huge. I mean, to me, that shows you have a good heart. And
I don't trust anybody that doesn't like animals. I'll probably lose votes for that, but
no, I don't either.
I don't. Animals are beautiful. There's no gratuitous cruelty in them. They're absolutely transparent and honest, and they're part of our universe.
Absolutely.
Right.
As far as from here, where do you go from here? You said you're going to start actively knocking on doors and everything in a month or so?
Well, our plan is to roll out a ground, I call it a ground campaign is what it's called. Canvassing and door knocking, probably in December, but most for sure in January. It's hard to do it in December because so many people are celebrating holidays. They're gone. And frankly, I don't want to be the jerk that interrupts the family holiday dinner or the visit from relatives. So I think January is probably when we'll start it. And that'll give us 5 full months of meeting people. And I've been walking around for several years in San Francisco, talking to thousands and thousands of people. I'm the president of one of our local Dem clubs. I've worked on a bunch of local campaigns as well as Bernie Sanders' campaign. So I feel that I am really in touch with the voters of San Francisco, and I feel my opponent is really out of touch and disconnected. She's not walking out on the streets. She won't debate. She won't give town halls. And I'm the other way. When people call my campaign number, I answer the phone. When people send me emails, I answer their emails if I can. As many as I can. I hope I'll be able to continue to do that. But I want to feel in touch with my constituents. And that's why I get back to this theme, giving the people of San Francisco, giving them their voice in Congress, which they do not have and have not had for a long time.
And I think I digress a little, and I get teased about this by some people because I like, not only do I follow politicians by what they stand for, but I also have to like them as people. And the way that you treat, I don't know if she's your wife or your girlfriend. I'm not sure, but the way you talk about her and show her pictures, and it is the most sweet, wonderful thing. And it says so much about you.
That is indeed my wife. Her name is awesome. Susan. Yes, and she's beautiful.
She is. And see you guys, that's what I'm talking about. See, I'm sorry. I don't know if it's if it's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's not important or whatever, but it is to me. I like people.
Well, I could not do this without her. And that's
awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't do it without her. So, yes, thank you for...
I know, I'm always looking at your page and I'm like, oh my God, he loves his wife, he loves animals, and he's fighting for the 99%.
Yes, yes I am.
That is so amazing. What is your message to those who feel completely defeated at this point, who basically just want to give up, and especially with the tax bill and now today the immigration, bullshit with, stopping people from flying certain places was passed by a judge, even though it was stopped several times. People are just kind of ready to give up.
Well, I guess my message would be this. Having lived for many decades now, I've come to understand about life that pretty much nothing is permanent. When you're feeling down and defeated, nothing is permanent. There is no law or change that cannot be fixed. All these things you're talking about, the immigration, the taxes, everything can be fixed. We just have to get the right people in the driver's seat to fix them. Right now, we got the wrong person driving the bus, or the wrong people driving the bus. We need to get the right people driving the bus, and it can happen. Nothing's permanent. Nothing. What's the old saying? There's nothing permanent but death and taxes, and
Right.
that might be true. The tax bill, even though it's a horror, can be repealed by a strong progressive Congress. Climate change can be addressed. Everything that's a problem now, almost everything, can be fixed. But it's going to take a real seismic earth change of voters, and mostly get out the vote. The number of people who vote in the U.S. Is terrible. People do not vote. We've got to get out the sleeping voters, and we've got to get them the progressive message, and we got to get them and vote for the progressive surge that I want to be part of, that I hope I'm a part of.
And we got to make sure that we don't, we need to make sure that we explain to people what kind of ballots they can use when they vote, because we saw in California how over 3 million votes got stuffed into boxes, and Bernie got the shaft. So we need to.
Well, election integrity is very important, and there's a couple of things I want. I like paper ballots. Paper ballots are important. San Francisco uses paper ballots. It's hard to mess around with San Francisco elections. Also, what's called open source software on these voting machines, much harder to hack and manipulate. And there's some other things. So that's an important plank in my platform, which is election integrity.
Great, awesome. Is there anything else that you want to say during the interview?
Yes, I want to give my two things. I want to give my donation website, donation link.
You were going to go there.
Yes, and I want to say that I want to encourage people, if what I've had to say resonates with any of you, and you'd like to help out, aside from donating, which is unfortunately the hardest thing for me to do, is to ask people for money. But it's not for me; it's for a cause, really. But we need volunteers also, particularly, it doesn't matter where you live. You can live anywhere in the U.S. because we can set up phone banking where you can help us. So if you want to volunteer, I will give you the link. The donation volunteer is donate.jaffe, my last name, Jaffe, the number 4 and the word Congress.com. And if you go to my website, which is surprisingly Jaffe, the number 4, the word Congress.com, there's a tab there called Volunteer, and that's how you sign up. And I would love to get to talk to some of you and know some of you, and please do that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, you know how much I adore you. You are so great. I'm so glad you came on. I could tell by the comments, people really like you. And I need everyone to share this, to tag all your friends in California, make sure they share it, because we need to get the word out and get Stephen in there and Pelosi out.
Well, the feeling is mutual, Joy. I really like you too.
Thank you. So again, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks everyone for watching. on December 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern, I will be having Congressman Ro Khanna on.
I like Ro Khanna.
I do as well. I have no idea how the hell I acquired that, but I'm excited. And he's huge on net neutrality, and it's the night before the vote. So that should be an interesting show.
He's the congressman for Silicon Valley, so he better be huge on it.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. All right. Well, thank you so much again, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you too.
Absolutely.
Have a good evening. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.